Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 83rd episode of the Oligarchy Disruptor podcast with your host, Bennett, Leon, and of course, we have the lovely Ashley down here with us as well.
Hey, everybody.
Alrighty, guys, we have another amazing episode for you. Ashley, so what are we going to talk about today?
All right, so we are going to talk about the progressive wins from last night. And we're going to specifically show a video of Jamal Bowman talking about I think this is actually his winning speech.
It's his victory speech. Mm-hmm.
Yes, his victory speech. And then kind of go into what is ahead for these progressives that just won.
Absolutely.
So in a nutshell.
And their obstacles that they might face, because as we all know, there's a lot of shit that goes on when you get into power in Congress. So let's just jump into the video. Not the video first, my bad. Let's go talk about the list of people that won.
Yeah.
And talk about the big progressive win for our side of the party, for the left. All right. So there are some bigger, higher profile wins that went on yesterday. Jamal Bowman of New York had a 25-point lead over House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Eliot Engel, another Democrat, the incumbent of that seat in New York. And this was a really, really, really important one. I'm just going to stop at this one really quick, just to highlight the fact that this was really an instance of the establishment versus the progressive or the left wing of the party. Literally endorsed by Bernie Sanders. Jamal Bowman was endorsed by Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, et cetera, AOC, and Eliot Engel, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, Andrew Cuomo, you name it, from the establishment, they were backing him as well. So I'm so happy to see that progressive won here. Also down the list, we have Charles Booker, who was trailing Amy McGrath. It was also kind of sad to see, because we saw in poll after poll that came out in Kentucky that Charles Booker, the progressive candidate in the race between Booker and Amy McGrath in the Democratic primary, Booker was going to do much better against Mitch McConnell in the general election for that Senate seat than Amy McGrath would, because apparently they've tried this over and over and over again during the establishment centrist candidates at Mitch McConnell, and he just eats them up. So he came very close. Charles Booker came very close this time to getting that nomination on the Democratic side, but fell short. But we have some really happy news for you guys as well, for those AOC lovers.
And also not surprising, let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. But she had an amazing funding haul. I believe she had $40 million. And her closest competitor, which was some TV anchor or some shit, only got $4 million worth of funding. So or $8 million or something like that. Not too much, but AOC, she's still strong.
Yeah,
of course.
She's also been out there marching and actually getting the voters engaged as well, all the way up to this day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Clearly paid off.
Mm-hmm. And then we also have another progressive win in Mondaire Jones. And we have also Richie Torres along with Mondaire Jones and Tina Balter. They all built up their double-digit leads in their primary races in New York. And Jones and Torres, very specially, I want to highlight this, are looking to become the first openly gay black men ever elected to Congress. So I thought that was really interesting as well. But we have a lot of progressive wins, which is the point here, and something that should be noted. Anything you want to take away from after going off this list?
No. I'm excited about the progressive wins for sure. I'm hopeful, but not as optimistic. We'll get to that later.
Absolutely. So I think this is a great place to jump into the next video, or the first video that we have for you guys, first and only, of Jamal Bowman in his victory speech following his win for the primary against Elliot Engel. So let's go ahead to see hear what he has to say, because I was really excited to hear him say this, and the stuff he says is like very direct, very like meta in his thinking and like the way that he perceives the world and the systems that function in its current state. So I think it was very interesting, and I think it's going to be really interesting to have him in power to see how he kind of responds to the system. But let's go ahead and play.
Man, in America, you get to learn about death and homicide and suicide and how it impacts not just you individually, but your community and the rest of the country. And it was these experiences that led me to being an educator in the first place. And I served in that role as an educator with pride and passion and dignity, and tried my best to do everything I could to uplift the lives of every child that I taught and every child that I served, and to do everything I could to make sure families had what they needed and that they understood and leveraged the power of their voices. Unfortunately, as we all know, we live in a country where, despite our financial wealth, we have tens of millions of children still living in poverty. And as an educator working for the Department of Education for 20 years, I've seen the impact of poverty on the lives of our kids each and every day. And poverty is not a result of children and families who don't work hard. Our children and families work as hard as anyone else. Poverty is by political design and is rooted in a system that has been fractured and corrupt and rotten from its core from the inception of America, especially over the last several decades. So poverty and the impact of poverty on our children, and dealing with issues of institutional racism and sexism and classism and xenophobia and everything that keeps the majority of us oppressed, is what we designed this campaign to fight against. So tonight, as we celebrate, we don't just celebrate me as an individual. We celebrate this movement, a movement designed to push back against a system that's literally killing us. It's killing Black and brown bodies disproportionately, but it's killing all of us. It's killing us mentally, psychologically, and spiritually. It's forcing us to live in a country and in a world where so many people are hopeless and have lost faith, not just in the political system, but in each other. But our movement is designed to restore that faith, to restore that hope, to bring back the belief in what is possible.
So I'm going to stop it there. But he basically goes on to say how his campaign and give thanks to the people that contributed to his campaign and whatnot, and what it stands for. But I kind of want to just talk about everything that he just mentioned, and talking about the systematic oppression that happens from the top down, right? And I think it's really important to know that poverty is by design. It's by systematic design, within our economic system. This is one of the things that we choose to have when we opt into capitalism at large. This on top of many other issues. Now we have some type of we have an oligarchy forming as well within our democratic system. So that should be known. And it's more people should talk about it in power, but they just don't, but that's just something that I really thought that should be highlighted, is that you are suffering, and the way you're feeling and the stress that you're under because of your job or losing your job or this, what's going on right now with coronavirus or whatever, it's all by design. That's the way the system is supposed to work. But that should mean to you, and it should click in your head that the system therefore is fucked, so maybe we should seek another solution, or maybe not a whole nother system, maybe some other flaw, or fix it, bandage, whatever the fuck you want to do, but do something to fix the system, so.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on that?
I really I like that you pointed that specific part out about what he said at the beginning of his speech, because a lot of people, I took a whole class on poverty policy is what it was called. And one of the main things that we discussed was this misconception that people have that poor people make poor choices, and that's why they're poor. And that's just not the case, you know? And that was the whole point of the class, poverty policy. It's that policies are put in place that have made people, made it harder for people to climb the ladder, but have also made it hard for people just to get out of poverty in general. It's just a generational thing. And when you do get out of poverty, you can maybe be one out of your whole family that does get out. And it's just, it's something that is so obviously systematic. And I'm glad that now there's going to be another person, hopefully, in Congress that sees that, because there is this big misconception that people who are poor because they made themselves that way. They made bad decisions.
Yeah, and to an extent, it is true. Like, you know, like you are responsible for your own actions. Like, that's not to say like the government is completely responsible for like all your wrongdoings and whatnot. Like, this is not an excuse for the people that actually are lazy, that are suffering because of their own doing or whatnot. That's not for them. Like, this is for the people that are negatively affected, that are doing everything right. These are for the people, the single mothers that are working 2 or 3 jobs to hold up the system, the people that are working 40 hours a week and still not making a living wage.
Or people who are living off the government because they can't afford to not. Because if you live, they need their Medicaid, they need their Medicare. I personally have met a lot of people who choose to not work that much because the amount of money that would come out of their paycheck to pay their insurance, their health insurance, they would not be able to afford living without that 30 or 40 extra dollars per paycheck. And to some people that might seem really minuscule, but $30 or $40 is groceries for us, you know? And when you think about that, it makes sense why they want to not have a full-time job, why they want to be able to get Medicare. And that's sad. That's sad when we don't have a federal minimum wage that allows people to live a livable minimum wage. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad a lot of people are like looking for like other answers and looking to other systems for solutions, looking to other countries and other examples to see who can do it better, who has done it better. I know a lot of people are turning to socialism right now. A lot of people are turning to like libertarianism as well, like interesting phenomenon that's going on. But a lot of people are going to the third party, Green Party as well. Like you name it, they're kind of flocking to it because they just see the whole system kind of crumbling and everything. Like coronavirus has just really exposed the ugliness of like the United States and like our structural, like how we oppress like our own people and how we keep them in poverty using our system as well.
Yeah, and that's what I really like the fact that Jamal has been an educator, because you see so many. My mom is a teacher; she's still an educator right now, and what you see, the experiences that you learn about from your students. You work with so many different people, such a diverse population. And I think that that's a really awesome that he is a former educator that's going to be in Congress, because I think that there's a lot that he could bring to the table, knowing all these different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Also,
and in New York,
the school to prison pipeline, that is something very specific to the education system, you know?
Yes.
Like that's where it starts. And
in particular with impoverished students.
Exactly. So that's really important to mention as well. But I want to kind of like pivot back to the elections and whatnot, and the obstacles that a lot of these freshman congressmen are going to probably face if they are elected into office. Now, what we talk about when we mentioned their obstacles is there are obstacles within their own party, like obstacles that we saw with Bernie Sanders when he was running, obviously that we all saw like the DNC. So we have the DNC as like an obstacle. We have since they're running since they're going to be in the House, they're also going to have to work with Nancy Pelosi.
I wish we had one of those like fiery backgrounds where we could put her face. Nancy Pelosi.
But yeah, they're gonna have to work with Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. We're gonna throw them into literally the fucking lion's den, right? To work with all these people. But yeah, the hope is to throw enough progressives into office and put enough left wingers into office, or at least reasonable fucking thinking human beings. Not even left if they don't have to be or whatever. But hopefully,
sure,
all the left people into office. And or all the progressives into office, and seeing what we can do that way. As we know that, of course, like we mentioned, they're going to face all these different challenges from the establishment, right? But we have seen good movements in a really progressive direction when it comes to legislation in this year. I don't know if you've noticed it as well. A lot of the legislation has become a lot better, but at the same time, it did steal that legislation under Pelosi. Did steal like fucking like what was it? They gave away $6 trillion in the CARES Act or whatever. And they
I don't know how progressive what you're talking about. Progressive,
like
I don't see that at all.
The most progressive it's ever been was my point. I think maybe other than like FDR times progressive, like New Deal progressive is.
And isn't that nuts?
Yeah.
We're in 2020.
Yeah, it's literally crazy. But that's no mistake as well. That's also by design. Mm-hmm. That's also because the two-party system holds a grip on our election system, and they literally own the commission for the debates. So they command who gets to go on and gets exposed to the American people and gets all that exposure, which is how a lot of the third-party candidates get the exposure enough to win those elections, is because of those debates, those national debates with all of those people. Won't let that happen.
How democratic.
Exactly.
How democratic.
That's the whole point of the thing, So
I like that you mentioned though about Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and the list goes on. Right before we started recording, I was talking about how I'm excited. I'm happy, that these progressives won primaries. Let's just be reminded, not trying to be pessimistic, but they still need to make it to Congress. However, even if they get there, like AOC, she's there. Rashid Tlaib, she's there. We have progressives in Congress right now. And we're almost 100% positive that AOC voted against our interests in the first, and then all of a sudden she wanted the vote to be transparent, when she was going to vote for her congressional district. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of obstacles with the current establishment Democrats, aka pretty much all the Democrats right now. Enough so that progressives aren't going to be able to get much done. But I hope that maybe like power in numbers and more people will vote progressive, and we'll see more primaries with progressives winning, and maybe progressives can win the House instead of Democrats. Do I see that happening this time around? I don't. But I can be hopeful. I like to be optimistic. Do I see it even happening like soon-ish, progressives like taking over the Democratic Party? Not really. I think that progressives have a better chance making their own party and going at it from a different angle versus just running with the Democrats.
You know what I think is a really interesting statistic? It's like 40% of the people under 30 think that socialism isn't as bad as or they're open to the idea, or they're favorable, I believe. Yeah. They are favorable to the idea of socialism.
Now, with that in mind, though,
yeah, go ahead.
I think that I know that people are very afraid of that word. They hear socialism and they're like, commies, you know? So I don't know if I would necessarily like name it the Socialist Party, but like, what about the People's Party? I like that idea, you know? Or I don't know, the Progressive People's Party.
If it takes a rebranding campaign to do it in America, so be it. But the principles are the same, you know, like these are Marxist ideas, like, you know, like it's going to be the same thing no matter what you call it. But a lot of the people are favorable to it. And it's because a lot of us haven't been exposed to a lot of the red baiting that a lot of the people like our parents and grandparents or whatever were exposed to back in the day in like the 50s with McCarthyism and like that whole era that went on there too. So like, yeah, no. I think that also kind of plays into the fact that like how progressive the new generation is. We're also the most accepting generation ever, like with like LGBT like rights and stuff. So I mean that's also like, I mean it just plays into the fact that like where the future is shaping up to be bright. And the more and more as the years progress, I think that the country's going to get better, but I don't know if it's going to get better fast enough to where we can actually make like and save the country, because like that time is honestly like
that's
right around
super depressing.
I'm just being real. I always try to tell the truth, no matter what I think or whatnot. But
do you think
right now?
Do you think progressives have a chance? So like these progressives that have been voted in, or, you know, won primaries, hopefully going to win in November. Do you think that they have a good chance of making headway in Congress? Or do you think that they would have a better chance building their own party and going at it from a different angle?
I think they would have more legislative success if they played within the system of the Democratic Party.
Really?
Yes. I think that if they made deals like AOC does, even though she's like a progressive or whatever, she is well liked. She calls Nancy Pelosi Mama Bear, et cetera, et cetera. So I believe if they worked within the system, they would get more legislative, like things with their name on it done by getting to work with them. But of course, with concessions, you know, like concessions to those people. They're not going to be like whatever they would get if they were just like pure, like themselves just write the legislation. But if they chose to do it from the outside, I think that they could hold on to their credibility. I think they could hold on to their integrity. I think that people would support them eventually long term. But going that route, also, you don't get a lot of support. A lot of the people also don't support like Bernie Sanders. He gets a lot of hate from the Democratic voters all the time. And I've seen this for every election cycle that he's participated in for the presidential election. And they always say that he's not really a Democrat. Like, why he's even like running on our ticket or whatever. Like, who gives a fuck what he is? But I mean, like, whatever.
But it's true.
Yeah. So,
and it's also true that if you would have gone third party, there's a very good chance he would have won the election in November.
But that was also a strategic decision by him, you know?
Exactly. And what happened? He lost.
Yeah, you know, so...
which is why I almost kind of think that it would be better for these progressive candidates to take a different angle. But I mean, I see what you're saying about working within the party. Like, would people even know who they were if they didn't run on the Democratic ticket? Yeah. But I think, honestly, I love AOC, but she has lost some integrity. She's given concessions. Hey, you've talked shit about AOC on here before. I mean, and I think that they could be more authentic to who they are and their ideologies if they look at Bernie. Bernie sold out at the end.
Bernie fucking sold out, dude. Yeah, you're right.
So it's like, I don't know. Part of me wonders if it's just going to be either you have to sell out or you're going to be assassinated if you try to do anything as a progressive in the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Or you do what this is, I think what's really interesting that we're going to bring this up. I was maybe thinking about doing that whole other episode for this. But it's really interesting to kind of compare what happens in an oligarchy. So earlier in one of our other episodes, I think I mentioned something about Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, which is the president of Mexico, right? He was elected in 2018 as a progressive, right? And he founded his own party called Morena in Mexico after working within the other parties and realizing that he couldn't make it, and they supported him or whatever, kept pressing him. So he made his own party. He won. His party took over the Congress and the presidency. He promised to reform the country and end corruption, end poverty, all this type of great stuff, right? And I was reading yesterday from an article from the Gray Zone, which, if you don't know it, is the editor is Max Blumenthal, which is a highly credible journalist in the field. But the article was basically about how the oligarchs in Mexico, along with the media, along with influencers and other businessmen, political parties, they're all uniting together to work against the president of Mexico to topple him and to start a coup against the president. That's what happens in a system like that when you win. That could have happened here with Bernie Sanders, and it probably would have happened if it's so easy for me to imagine the political parties working against him, trying to topple him as a president, working against everything he's doing, even as a progressive Democrat or whatever. It's easy for me to see the media talking shit about him as a president. Especially Fox News laying it on Bernie every day. I could totally see that shit, it's really interesting to think about that, to see what the opposite end of it looks like to actually win.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see a lot of uproar about Bernie being president, but I also think that there were a lot of people who, and we've talked about this before, people who voted for Trump who would have voted for Bernie, and people who aren't going to vote at all in November because they wanted to vote for Bernie. So I think that there are a lot of people in this country that support Bernie enough so that it would outweigh the people who don't like Bernie. And I think that would have shown if he was elected because he would have by far gotten the popular vote. I truly believe that. I truly believe the majority of people in this country wanted Bernie to be president. But we've also seen before with very, very influential, liked presidents also having a lot of backlash once they are elected. FDR being one of them too. And so I can see what you're saying. I can totally see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say an entire coup would happen in the United States necessarily, but I think it would be more low key. I think what it would look like here would be more working with the media, trying to get the public support against the president.
I think it would be more we're not going to let anything pass at all.
CIA type shit. Of course, that's a given. That's for sure going to happen with any progressive president. That's happening with progressive legislation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for sure out of the window. Legislation, you're not getting shit done.
Yeah. Which at the same time, it just makes it, I don't know, then it makes you wonder, is it such a bad thing that we didn't end up with Bernie? Because wouldn't anything of that happened anyways?
By executive order, you could, the president is very powerful, too, at the same
I know, but I kind of go back and forth with the executive.
And the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court, that's a big deal. Yeah, that's for sure.
president is very powerful.
Hey, but our conservative court has been surprising us lately. So who knows?
Yeah, they have a DACA and LGBTQ rights and stuff. Dope.
Yeah, killing it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that's for another episode. But thank you guys. What do you think about wrapping up here?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, perfect. So once again, guys, thank you so much for listening and tuning into this episode. If you're watching as well, please follow us on our social media if you haven't done so already. We are, where are we on Facebook? My bad. Where are we on?
Everywhere. So we are on Facebook. We are on, oh yeah, you just said that. Facebook. We're on Instagram. We are on YouTube. We are on every single podcast platform, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I don't even know all of them, but I think there's like 6 total. So we're on 8. Oh my goodness. That's a lot. And then every other in Twitter. I didn't mention Twitter. We're also on that. We have a website on WordPress. You can just Google WordPress, the Oligarchy Disruptor. And we write articles there. We post lots of different stuff. So go on there. You can also listen to us on the website as well.
Absolutely.
Lots of fun stuff.
Okay, yeah, definitely check us out there. And of course, we have, I'm sure you haven't seen all of our videos. If you have, super thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for that. Yeah, there's a multitude of videos. We are up to 83 with this video. So amassing and catching up to you, Joe Rogan. We're not quite up to 2,500 videos quite yet, but we are on our way over there. So
we're trucking.
We're trucking along. So once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.